where did no dig begin? And also in time, but also in your story, Charles. So I don't know if you know, can you share with us like how did no dig come to be?
I would love to know more of the history of no dig before about the 1940s is when it's sort of documented. But I'm sure people
Yeah.
were doing it before that, just they weren't didn't have a name for it, and they grew things without disturbing the soil, and it all worked for them. But most people, certainly in my country, in the UK, that traditionally have been cultivating soil with a fork or a spade to get ground ready for sowing and planting. And then in the 1940s, there was a head gardener, a well-known gardener in northwest England. He did lots of experiments with no dig, and he wrote it up in a book. He was called F.C. King,
Mm.
but that never really never took off. And then I came across when I started out Ruth Stout's book, No Work Gardening, and she explained it really nicely. I thought, and so actually the first thing I did was I bought a load of old hay. And my father was a farmer; he was horrified. Buying old hay, what do you do? And I spread that on the ground, as a mulch. I could see the viability of mulching to suppress weeds because what I noticed with most gardeners that I saw, there's just too many weeds, and it
Yeah.
was people were spending so much time weeding and then the weeds just came back. It was never going forwards. It was always just maintaining a status quo if you were lucky. So I thought, right, I'm going to mulch and smother them, and the hay worked. But in my climate, unlike Ruth Stout's, I got a lot of slugs because we're quite damp here, and she
Yeah.
apparently is more dry in Connecticut, very cold winters. So then I switched from hay to compost, and that's pretty much been it ever since. And that was in 1983. So 40 years now, I've been doing this and
Yeah.
using different amounts of compost on different soils, trying different things, variations of the same theme, if you like. And just carrying on quietly, doing it in the background, not saying a lot about it, because there wasn't much interest in soil and this kind of thing until quite recently.
Mm.
More organic. I've been organic as well since the early 80s. And that was more interesting to people in the 80s because everyone was using pesticide and fertilizer. Can we really grow food without the chemicals? And I started promoting no dig in 2006 when I wrote my first book, and it's just been going ever since.
Yeah, I will say that I think the first time I encountered at least the concept was also a Ruth Stout book. I
Oh,
had seen, oh man, where was it? I can't remember if it was on early YouTube in like 2010 or 2011, but then I did find a copy of the Ruth Stout No Work Garden, tattered copy. I think I bought it off of eBay or something like
yeah,
that,
right.
and read it and was like, first of all, the way she wrote was very engaging.
Isn't it?
She just had this sort of no nonsense
Yeah.
approach. I don't know. I really liked it. And then I had found an old YouTube video that someone had profiled her and interviewed her somehow, and they had it on video. I think they had some sort of video, and she was just you just saw the way she was gardening, and she was saying like, "Yeah, I don't go to the grocery store. I don't like doing any work, like da da da." And you're just like, I kind of want to be like this woman. She seems pretty cool.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's how I sort of got into it. But I will confess, I didn't really practice it for quite some time after that because I was still growing in very small spaces. This year, last year, maybe ever since we met is when I've started really going more that direction, and it's been amazing. I mean, even Jacques, who's on our team, the Garden Hermit, he did a full Ruth Stout, like classic Ruth Stout potato bed, full hay, planted them in the hay on top of the soil, right?
Yeah.
And he had his best potato crop he's ever had.
Ah,
And
fantastic.
and
I think the
we're
hay is more suited to your climate because you're drier, aren't you? So
yeah,
keeping in the
yeah.
moisture, and you don't maybe get slugs so badly as we do here.
We almost get no slugs whatsoever. We have other pests, obviously,
Yeah.
but the funny part about so I did a no dig potato similar to your approach. So I did in soil and just didn't touch it, and I got a pretty good harvest. To be honest with you, I will say that some of them did peak above the soil and
Yeah, I
they got
agree.
green, but it's
Yeah.
okay, not a big deal. Whereas Jacques in his hay, he had them fully covered the whole time. So you could actually like move the hay away and you'd see the entire structure of the plant.
Amazing.
And so he would just basically pull up a subterranean potato that was never buried, and he had these perfect potatoes. So I got a little bit jealous, but yeah, it was a really cool experiment to see.
Yeah.
So for you, does no dig tie in? I know you're a vegetarian, right?
Well, not all the time actually. I
Yeah.
vary. Like I
Okay.
lived in France for a while. I farmed there, and it's impossible to be vegetarian in there. Well, very difficult.
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
and we had a
yeah,
small farm, and actually we were raising animals, and I would kill them and eat the meat.
yeah,
So I'm not totally against eating meat, but most of the time I eat vegetables. That's my favorite food. I love eating vegetables. So
yeah,
that's what's led me into organic no-dig gardening because I want to eat really healthy, bountiful amounts of food that tastes
yeah.
really good and fresh, and is really good for me.
That I remember because when I visited your place, Homemakers, I remember missing the train from London, being really sad, and I was also sick. I think I had a fever or something.
Yeah.
And so then I got on the next train, got down there, and then before we went out and did our video together, we had or maybe it was after, but we had like a meal. It was like soup. You had roasted a rutabaga or something like that. And I remember going like, "Oh wow, like I like vegetables way more in this fashion, right?"
Yeah.
Because I've never been the best chef. I like to cook. Maybe a different life, I would cook more. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean
Well,
that's been
it's been a privilege for me recently to work with an ex-chef who wants to become a gardener. In fact, she has now,
mm,
Kate Forrester, and she started her own no-dig market garden actually a couple of years ago,
oh wow,
four-acre farm. And we profiled her on a YouTube video. We're going to go back there in August. But that, for me, is a beautiful synergy that's happening more
oh
and
yeah,
more now. Chefs are really getting into this and learning about what's it truly in season, and even how
yeah,
to grow it. And I'm working a lot with chefs now, and I really enjoy that because that's
yeah,
you've got to
yeah.
build these links, and children too is another one. Really get, they love no dig as well. So
Children are obsessed with it. I've found, especially because if a kid is connected to what they're growing, of course they're going to want to eat it. Then instead of just being thrown on the plate. And then yeah, the chef. So there's a book that I had purchased a while ago. It got recommended to me called Six Seasons. I don't know if
no,
you've heard of
I like
it,
the sound
but
of that.
it's a great book. So it's written by a chef, but he grew up as a gardener, and so he calls it Six Seasons because I believe he counts spring twice and maybe fall twice. I think different areas of that season, and so yeah, the book is organized by season, and then you go ahead and pick the plant. Let's say beets. He'll explain exactly when the beet is ripe, why it's ripe, or not ripe in that case, but you get what I mean, ready,
Yeah,
and then how to effectively work it into a dish. And that's the coolest part to me because he has both.
yeah,
So because I remember a lot of chefs, like I used to sell to chefs, and they would say, "Oh, the color's amazing. Oh, the flavor's cool," but they sometimes didn't really care like, is it ready? Is it not ready? Why is it good now?
yeah,
That gardener side of it, they didn't care about that much, and it seems like that's changing.
yeah, very much. And also, until recently, I've been had hard work selling to chefs because they have the idea of what they want to prepare and cook,
Hmm.
and then not so easily influenced by actually what's available. So they'd
Weird,
rather
yeah.
go and get it from another country if need be, as opposed to using and needing to be creative more, which is great in the end.
Which would be you might say would be the mark of an excellent chef, right? Would be to use
Yeah,
what's in season at this exact moment
totally.
and go with it. Watch the full episode right here and subscribe for more new episodes every single week.